the penis, suck a fucking dog.
Gibson, it's okay. Hey, buddy. So.
Why doesn't it work? Cool. Okay. What the hell am I doing? I forgot what I was doing. Oh, yeah.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah,
He
it
won't
does
even look.
work. Okay. So now, yeah, that's the other thing. What's this shit?
He has at least 2,000 to 2,000.3 thousand average viewer base now. Average of fucking 263 followers per day. Shut up, dumbass soft spaghetti streamer. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Yo, chill out. The guy's like 6 years old, man. It's like his last fucking. Okay. I'm not gonna be. Okay, I was gonna take it too far. Anyway.
Declining theatre attendance.
What the fuck? Oh, Jesus. Why is it so loud? Holy fuck.
Rising ticket prices, disappointing box office returns, shrinking theatrical windows, and now major studio buyouts by streaming giants. It's fair to say that
Okay. Hopefully that's a decent volume now. Holy shit, that was loud.
2025 has been a rough old year for Tinseltown, for movie theaters, for audiences, and the entire movie industry.
What the hell was I gonna
But here's
do?
the
There was
thing,
something I was
these
gonna
aren't
do.
bugs anymore. They're features.
I forgot.
Features of a changing entertainment landscape, a changing culture, and a changing perception of what films even mean to us now. The recent news that Netflix have officially won the bidding war to buy out Warner Brothers and their entire catalogue of IPs seems to have thrown the entire industry into a tailspin. Damn man, they've even petitioned the dreaded Orange Man to intervene and block the deal, as if the fucking White House has got any say over corporate mergers. The major fear in Hollywood is that Netflix will gradually move away from the theatrical model and transition movies almost entirely to streaming, and well, they probably should be afraid of that because I'm pretty sure that's the plan all along. But this isn't just the actions of a single streaming giant that wants to destroy movie theaters purely for shits and giggles. It's a simple reflection of the reality facing the movie industry now. A reality that's been knocking on the door of Hollywood with increasing volume and declining patience for years now and isn't going to be put off for much longer. It's time for some harsh truths, dear viewer, and the drinker is the one to administer them. The theatrical movie experience as we knew it is dying. It's not in a temporary slump, it's not just going through a bad spell right now, it doesn't need to hang in there until things pick up again, and you can't keep blaming it on fucking COVID.
It's all bullshit. All of it.
The fact is, it's not going to get better. What we're seeing now are the final stages of a process that started decades ago. To understand it, let us discuss the theatrical movie experience as we know it today, shall we? Now, imagine for a second that you're a typical American family man with a wife and 2 kids. You work a slightly unfulfilling corporate job that teenage you would probably be horrified by, but hey, it pays the bills, so whatever, I guess. And yeah, the sex is more of a predictable weekly ritual now than an exciting experience.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to my coworker about this yesterday. Just that. Okay, first of all, they haven't fucking all these theaters. Like AMC, if you go to AMC, they have a Dolby Cinema and they have an IMAX cinema. Okay, so these are specific theaters that IMAX and Dolby, I guess, have some say over because they're different. Meaning, in the Dolby Cinema, there's recliners. They have like these really nice chairs. And in the IMAX one, they have the same shitty chairs that they've been using at movie theaters since I was a kid. These dog shit ones that are C-shaped. So you have absolutely no lower back support. And for some fucking reason, some idiot thought a C was a good idea. So the whole time you're like being kind of forced forward a little bit with absolutely nothing on your back. No back support. So it's incredibly uncomfortable. If you were to sit all the way back in that chair, you're like this. Like it forces you to hunch over. Who the fuck designed these fucking chairs, dude? It's terrible. But anyway, the point is they haven't innovated. They haven't done anything. All the rest of the theaters, fuck me. I mean, the rest of the theaters are the same. The rest of the theaters, fuck the IMAX and Dolby. If you go to the other, rooms, like good luck, bro. You're fucking gonna need a chiropractor. But it's the point is they haven't innovated. They haven't done shit in 50 years. It's the same fucking thing. Like, how is this? This isn't rocket science, man. Like, people don't want to go to the movie theater and eat an entire bucket of popcorn for fucking dinner. And like, yeah, there are places where you can go have, you go to a restaurant and then go to the movie theater because they're in proximity to each other. How about you just have the restaurant in the movie theater? How about you just make the food there? And I'm not talking about fucking pretzels and, little shitty pizza, fucking microwavable pizza. Like, have an actual restaurant. There are theaters in my location around me where they have the full thing. They have the restaurant, they have a bar, and then they have a recliners, and it's all like an upgraded experience. And it's like, how is that not the standard? Because the movies are ass. The movies are all bad, okay? And the reason somebody at this point in cinema evolution, I gotta do my squats. I'll be right back. Fuck. Yeah, so the fuck was I talking about? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the movies are ass. All the movies are bad, and the only reason somebody would go to the movie theater now is if the movie was really good, unmissable, which doesn't fucking happen. The last time we had that was Dune, and it wasn't even that good. And the second reason is because the experience of a movie theater is fun even if the movie isn't good. Like, you're still getting other shit, right? The movie experience right now is, for me, if I were to go to AMC theaters, it's just fucking, I go there, it's the same fucking snacks and shit that they've been serving since I was a kid. Just popcorn and pretzels and fucking ice cream, and it's all just shit of no substance whatsoever. So as an adult, you just kind of like, I guess I can't really eat any of this stuff without fucking exploding or, getting diabetes. So I guess I'll have like a little popcorn with some fucking seed oils. And can I get a small Coke? Oh, that'll be $12. Oh, Jesus, fuck. Okay, well, how much is the bigger Coke then? $12.50. Oh, gee, I wonder which one I'm gonna fucking pick. And it's just like, really? You guys haven't done anything different in the past 50 years? You haven't thought of one single idea better than that? Better than fucking nachos and popcorn? It's frustrating as fuck, dude. I love movies. And they don't fucking care. They don't care at all. They're just like, what are they relying on for this business model? It's almost like they want it to fail. It's almost like they want their movie theaters to fail, and then they just make money on the way down. They short it and the stock on the way down and make money that way. These people, there's no way they give a fuck. And yeah, I would imagine, because people don't think about it this way, but you know, yeah, like Amazon and Netflix, those are the direct competitors, because even though you're not going anywhere, you're still watching movies, you're still watching the same content. So these big executives that own Netflix and Amazon and you know, fuck, even Google, because of YouTube, they want theaters to fail. And who's to say that they aren't in cahoots in, you know, shorting the stock, making deals with certain executives? These fucking executives, man, they get fucking passed around. They go everywhere. They're not just like, oh, I'm the executive of Johnson & Johnson, and that's it. I'm going to be the executive of Johnson & Johnson for the next 30, 40 years. Like, no, they move around all the time. So who's to say what connections are made, what emails are sent, you know, what backroom cigar smoke-filled rooms, what kind of, you know, talks these people have and plot. It's not hard. It's like everybody assumes that the movie business is dying anyway. All they have to do is not do anything, which they haven't in 50 years. They haven't fucking done anything. There's other smaller theaters that have innovated way more. I went to a theater to see Beetlejuice. The fucking seats were moving. Like a roller coaster. It would like lean you forward, lean you back. What? I didn't even know that was first of all, I didn't even know that was a thing. Second of all, I didn't even know that was in that movie theater. I just went to go see Beetlejuice. I didn't even know that the theater was going to do that. And it just started moving around like, holy fuck, this is great. I mean, even if that's not your thing, it doesn't matter. The point is that it's an innovation. It's trying something new. It's not doing the same fucking popcorn bullshit for 50 years. And so, and also this concept of, well, we spent all the money on the fucking screen. Everything is, don't you know, it's the blacks are blacker and the, you know, the sound is more, it's around you more. We don't fucking care. We don't care. First of all, that should be a given. That should already be a given. Do your job. You know, that's just technology. Fine. But second, that's not why we go to the movie theater, so that we can see things clearer. We can see shit clearer at home, bro. We go to the movie theater for the experience. And 90% of the experience is exactly the same. It's exactly the same, bro. And we just don't care. The screen is big enough, and yeah, it is nice when it looks nicer or whatever. But I want to be comfortable. I don't want to fucking have no space. Like, I'm a bigger guy. Yeah, I understand that. There are other people who are smaller than me. They don't care. I don't want to be right next to a motherfucker. And that's it. Like, I have to be like this the whole movie theater or whole movie because the seats are tiny and they're fucking uncomfortable as shit. I spend the whole time now. I can't even watch the movie. I spend the whole time trying to adjust myself to be comfortable. And yeah, anyway, this is why this shit is dying, bro. Like, it's just dying. And the sad part about it, the real sad part about it is it deserves to die. That's the real problem. It deserves to die. It's not good. Yeah. Anyway.
To look forward to, and you're harboring a growing suspicion that a divorce could be on the cards once the kids have flown the nest and there's nothing left to hold the two of you together, but let's not worry too much about that right now. For today at least, you want to take the family out to the movies, so you drive for 30 minutes in heavy traffic to get to your local theatre, you buy the tickets which cost like $20 each, because of course the kids just have to see the film in IMAX, then you have to buy overpriced drinks and snacks because nobody can just sit through a 2-hour movie without shoveling a constant constant stream of food and drink down their throats. Then you take your seats, which smell a bit weird and have a suspiciously sticky patch around the crotch area that hasn't been cleaned, but let's not worry too much about that. And oh dear, it seems like there's a bunch of teenagers sat right behind you. What are the odds, eh? I hope you like eavesdropping, because you're going to be hearing them talk about every single detail of their lives throughout the entire movie. But hey, it's just part of the theatre experience, right? Oh yeah, and half the people around you already have their phones out, one or two are watching TikTok videos with the volume turned way up, and one guy's having a full-on argument with his girlfriend on speakerphone. But hey, it's just part of the experience, am I right? So you settle in as the lights go down, and you try to ignore the teenagers behind you, and the people who are still filtering in and tripping over people because the lights are off now, because it's time for trailers. Oh, come on! Well, actually, it's time for the commercials first, usually for luxury cars you're never going to be able to afford. Then after 15 minutes or so, you're deemed worthy to watch the trailers. Then another 20 minutes after that, it's finally movie time. But oh no, now your 5-year-old daughter decides that she really needs to go to the bathroom because all that soda has to go somewhere, right? So you stumble your way to the end of the row, tripping over feet and pissing off everyone else around you in the process, and you take her outside so she can go for a piss, and eventually you make it back to your seat, and yeah, you've missed the first 10 minutes of the movie now, but hey, it's all part of the experience, right? So you finally settle down to watch the film, and you try to ignore the gossiping teenagers and the people on their phones, and the stomach-churning sound of food getting shoveled into faces, and the smell of sweaty, unwashed bodies, and just concentrate on the pure cinema experience. Wait, isn't this just a remake of an animated movie you saw when you were a kid? Son of a bitch! Anyway, about 3 hours and several bathroom breaks later, you finally make it home, tired, mildly pissed off, and about $100 out of pocket, and you find yourself asking the question, what the fuck was the point in any of that? So with all that in mind, is it any wonder that more and more people are just opting out of movie theaters altogether? Like, be honest with yourself for a second. Unless you're a genuine cinephile who needs to see everything on the biggest screen imaginable, is it really worth the time, the hassle, the expense, the irritation and the discomfort just to see something that will probably be available on streaming in a few weeks anyway? Which brings me neatly along to my second point, the alternative. The appeal of the movie experience was always in the scale and spectacle, because until pretty recently, nothing in your home could ever hope to compete with it. Not anymore, however. These days, like $1,000 or less will get you a pretty serious home cinema setup. A setup that's ready to go whenever you want it, where you don't have to drive for half an hour just to get there, or shell out for overpriced snacks, or sit through endless trailers and commercials for the privilege of watching something that you've already paid for, or be forced to share the experience with a bunch of strangers who can spoil your enjoyment at any time they want, where you can pause the movie whenever you want and never miss a second of it, and most importantly, where the whole thing doesn't set you back more than $100 a pop. It's a trade-off for sure, a trade-off between spectacle on one side and comfort and convenience on the other, and the fact is, that trade-off's getting more and more appealing for the average person every single year. When you get right down to it, the harsh reality is that movie theatres are an outdated form of entertainment now, a holdover from the 20th century that's been propped up beyond its time by one simple philosophy: more. Gigantic budgets, more visual effects, bigger screens, louder sound systems. Studios and theatres have been locked into a cinematic arms race for decades now, pushing technology and spectacle as far as they could go until finally they hit an evolutionary dead end. It was always going to happen, it was just a question of when. And as it happens, the answer is now. So what does it all mean? Is this the end of Hollywood, the end of movies, the end of the world as we know it? No, of course not. There's always going to be a demand for entertainment, that'll never change. It's just the method of delivery that's evolving. People are going to watch more movies in the comfort of their own homes. It's inevitable. Theatrical windows are going to get shorter and probably vanish altogether eventually, so that movies will get released simultaneously onto streaming and theatrical. Movie theatres will still exist to some extent, but just like the old musical theatres from the 19th century, they'll become a much more niche experience, reserved for film buffs and occasional big event movies that people can't afford to miss. Box office revenues are going to keep declining until eventually they become obsolete metrics, and a film's real success will be determined by the number of hours watched on streaming, none of which will be independently verifiable, allowing studios to hide massive and embarrassing flops behind subscription walls. And as for the studios themselves, I'd expect more and more of them to be bought over by streaming and tech giants like Netflix, Apple and Amazon in the years ahead. Businesses that make their real money elsewhere and can easily afford to pump billions of dollars into film and TV production, even if a lot of it never actually turns a profit. Do I like where all this is going? Not really, because despite all their flaws, I think there is still something kind of special about going into a movie theatre and just losing yourself in a film for a couple of hours. But pretending this stuff isn't happening or that it can be magically reversed is like telling yourself that internet cafes or public payphones or video rental stores are going to make a comeback someday. They won't, because the moment technology made these things irrelevant, the culture quickly adapted to live without them. Movie theatres are dying out, and the Hollywood system that relied on them is dying along with them. Whether something better eventually comes to replace them is anyone's guess. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
So yeah, that was a weird. I feel like, I mean, it wasn't weird. I just mean, like, why didn't he talk about? I don't know. It's just like he talked about all the problems, didn't talk about any solutions. You know, there's ways to fix all that. Like I said, you know, make the chairs recliners, make them really comfortable. So yeah, that was a weird. What the fuck? Holy shit, that was loud. But you basically, you make the experience good again. You have ushers. You know, you take complaints very seriously when it comes to noise makers. In fact, I would even go as far as put little buttons in the seat that it's like a ring of the stewardess. You know, if something's happening, people can push a button and then it'll call an usher in. And an usher can come in and, you know, they could either talk to you or they could hear that people are fucking talking or being on their phone during the movie and tell people, like, hey, you got to stop that. That's one way to combat that shit. But anyway, also, yeah, everything else I said. Better food. There are places that I've been, man. I love certain theaters that I've been to that are great. You know, you can drink booze. You can have, you know, order chicken fingers and fucking, it's good. It's great. It's like good chicken fingers, though. Anyway, that's enough of that. Like I said, I think they know all this shit. They just don't want to. What is this?
Hey, what's going on? I'm the new hire. The manager told me to come over here. Said you're gonna be training me.
So yeah, that was a weird. I feel like, I mean, that wasn't weird. I just mean.
You see me eating, right? Oh, my fault.
What was I doing? Oh yeah.
Hey, what's going on? I'm the new hire. The manager told me to come over here. Said you're gonna be training me. You see me eating, right? Oh, my fault. My fault. I can't wait for you to get it. Get it. You already turned off my taste buds. You new cart attendant, right? Yeah. All right. Listen. What's that on your head? Oh, I just came from outside. Can't wear nothing on your head in the store, man. All right. Give me that. Here you go. All right. Now listen, just because you're a cart attendant, that don't mean that you just stock up the carts at the front of the store. That's not your only task. All right, follow me this way. Over here, this is the break room, all right? This is where all the youngest can stay at. Y'all stay over here, and don't be trying to be slick and sneak some extra breaks hiding in the bathroom. I know all the tricks. I just caught somebody like that last week. I popped out the toilet, he didn't know I was gonna be there. Now, like I said, this is where the young workers be. And this way, this is where the mature workers be. We call it the wolves' den. Hey, wolves! Fresh meat! Fresh meat! Like I said, this is the wolves then. All the mature workers, we're the wolves. To be a wolf, there comes sacrifice. Hey, wolves! Why do we work here?
Because this is all we have!
Why do we work here?
Because this is all we need!
Wait, y'all really act like this because of Walmart?
What? What do you say? What do you say? Where you gonna go? Watch your mouth!
Hey, young blood. Does it look like we playing?
Nah,
Does it sound like we playing?
no.
So then that means that we're not playing. Can you dig it?
Yeah,
So we don't need no shuffle, right?
no.
Right on.
All right. Now, like I said, sacrifice. Watch this. I'm about to call up the wifey right now. Hey, honey.
I hate you! I hate you!
She hasn't cooked for me in 10 years. I have no reason to go home. You think Michael Jordan, to be the best, you think he don't have to always be in the gym?
Call an attendant! We need you in the front of the store! It's busy!
All right, the shift started. Go work. Hey, wait. You didn't train me. We on our smoke break, youngin'. Go work.
My God!
Y'all got some smokes?
It's the busiest we ever been! Call an attendant, come to the front right now! Come to the front!
This guy, man, he's going around, this clavicular guy. First of all, I don't even really know why. I don't know why. I really don't understand. I don't know how he got started. Oh, fuck. That's me. I don't know how he got started, but my thing is, like, I used to know a guy like this. I think this guy is going to burn out really fast because the things that he's talking about don't really matter that much. They don't really matter. They don't have any substance. I think it's like a cheap thing that young people, like, there's literally nothing else, you know? And so you have all these young people watching this guy because, I mean, you know, I'm not saying he's like a bad guy or anything. I'm just saying, like, what he represents. Everything I've heard him say, he's just talking about looks. But everybody knows that's fleeting and it doesn't really matter. Like, it's fine. But if that's all you focus on, that's all you're going to get. Is if all you focus on is the shallow, your whole life is just going to be shallow. You know? And I guess that's a fine thing, but I just don't get why people don't see that. It must just be young people because they're too stupid to like know that what the fuck, Hitler. You're just too stupid to know that it doesn't matter. Is there anything good? Anything funny? Anything? Tim Dillon on MK Ultra. Sure.
Yeah. Like, take MK Ultra, which you've talked
I've never
about
seen this.
a lot.
Yeah.
That's kind of created modern society. Right.
If you think about it, like it created the whole hippie culture of the 60s because
Yeah.
the government was giving acid to every John in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, MK is very interesting because it's these things that people just really don't know about.
But it's definitely true. But it's always
definitely
labeled a
true.
conspiracy.
It's always labeled a conspiracy. It was a government basically trying to figure out how to control people's minds through psychedelic drugs, through certain tests, through depending on who you talk to, through very traumatic events that they either put people through or took people from those traumatic events. And so, so the reality is you have during the Cold War, you had the Russians and us basically trying to create super soldiers. We're experimenting with the idea of what would it take to create somebody who was, we could split their mind up so that they were the super spy, that they, wouldn't be able to confess any information because they genuinely didn't know it because that was in one part of their brain they couldn't access. It was one personality and the other person. And, what about a Manchurian candidate where you could essentially just have somebody be the president or be a senator, but literally be secretly controlled by, the group of people who had devised this, behavioral technology or technique. Their success level with that is, debatable. There are some people that believe that they were very successful at it and they were able to use it on people like Sirhan Sirhan, who assassinated Bobby Kennedy, and that it still works to this day. There are some people that will tell you that they were never able to do it. They were never able to hijack somebody's mind 100%. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. There are some very interesting things that people point to as examples of MK Ultra working. Sirhan's an example of that, where you look at it and you go, hey, it is a guy behaving very oddly. And, I don't know. You have a guy that assassinated, tried to kill Reagan, quote unquote, because he, supposedly loved Jodie Foster. And then you look at this guy, John Hinckley Jr., the Hinckley family and the Bush family were actually friends. Neil Bush was having dinner with the Hinckley family the day, or was scheduled to have dinner with them the day that one of their sons shot the president, which would make who the president? Neil Bush's father. Again, if it happened in Russia, we'd all go, see, Putin, conspiracy. Happens in America, we all just kind of ignore it. Very interesting to me. That's just a string of fun coincidences. Again, to me, it's a coincidence if, like, you're on a train and somebody next to you grew up in your town. That's a coincidence. The idea that of however many million people were in the country at that time, not as many as we have now, but a lot. The idea that the guy that tried to assassinate the president, his family was having dinner with the vice president's son.
Because I didn't hear that.
Fact.
Huh.
Fact. Can go look it up.
Huh.
Having dinner with the vice president's son, the guy who stood to inherit the job if Reagan was killed. That is an interesting coincidence. Just a fun coincidence that is 100% fact. You can look it up. It's Washington Post, New York Times, real deal. And why did he try to assassinate Reagan? Supposedly because he loved Jodie Foster.
Which is a narrative.
That's the narrative. So, I mean, again, do you know? I mean, what do I know? I just look at all these things and go, this seems odd. Because as a comedian, I think my job is to go, this seems odd. That's the base level of my job, is to go, there's a frozen yogurt place on every corner and yet people think it's healthy. That seems odd. And I write a dumb bit about that. Or, hey, the president's assassin, his brother, was going to have dinner with the vice president. That seems odd.
Okay, but does it seem odd that they would schedule a dinner, almost like a celebratory dinner, the day a family member is...
I find it odd they know each other. I find it odd that they even know each other on a level where they could be friends to that degree. Of all the people in the world that tried to assassinate the president, the idea that their families are close, and again, does it necessarily mean something I don't know, but it makes you look in a country that was a mature country that was being dealt with honestly by the press. That would have been a bigger story. And I think people would have started going, wait a minute. We want answers on this more than just JFK. Same thing. We want answers on this.
Yeah, by the way, you took a photo of yourself at the X, which, by the way, is very weird.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, that in Dallas, there's an X right at the spot where John F. Kennedy was shot.
Yes.
A week earlier, my wife, Robin, and I, we were in Dallas and did an Instagram video right at the X. And there's I don't know if you met this guy. There's a guy standing right there. At least he was then.
Yeah.
where he kind of describes, and he's selling a DVD. Here's where the shots came from. Here's, Lee Harvey Oswald was actually on the second floor eating lunch, and he was eating with his boss, and he wasn't on the 7th floor or the 6th floor or whatever, and no shots even came from the school board depository. School book depository. So I sort of feel like that was clearly a conspiracy or some kind of cover up, but for whatever reason, nobody wanted to investigate it.
Well, nobody wants to investigate anything. I mean, and that's a reality. People don't want to investigate it. The Boston Marathon bombing is very odd. You had 2 guys that the FBI said, we have no idea who they are. Then Russian intelligence came out and said, yeah, you do. We told you who they were. And then the FBI is like, okay, we did know who they were. And then it comes out that the FBI had some prior relationship with them, even though they've kind of denied this. And then they had to kind of walk back their denial. And it was probably a case of like the FBI recruiting them as informants. And then maybe something had happened, because the FBI does this all the time. This is how the FBI, does a lot of their work, is through the use of confidential informants. This is what they do. They entrap people. Entrapment is what the FBI does. They send a guy into a mosque with a bomb, and they try to get 3 other people to agree to go bomb somewhere, and then they go, you're all in jail. This is what the FBI does. There's FBI agents right now in an office in Virginia pretending to be 15-year-olds on the dark web, entrapping substitute math teachers that are pedophiles. I mean, this is just what they do. So,
I don't know if you remember. Well, it was before you were born, but in 1980 or 1970, there was the whole ab scam thing.
Yeah,
where the FBI pretended to be sheiks bribing all these politicians.
Of course,
total entrapment.
Yeah. Whitey Bulger, they have informants. This is what they do. And a lot of times they let those informants go out and do bad things as long as they keep informing. So the Boston Marathon bombing happened, and the FBI was like, we don't know who these guys are. And then Russian intelligence was like, we told you exactly who they were. And then you're like, these guys were traveling back and forth to I forget the name of it's Dagestan, but where is that? That's in Chechnya, or and it's like the Caucasus and shit, like these hotbed for terrorist activity, hotbed, and they're coming back and forth to America, and it's okay and it's fine, and then eventually this horrible bombing happens and people start asking questions, and it's very weird, and they shut down the whole city of Boston. They catch these 2 guys in a boat. They're trying to kill both of them. Clearly, they end up killing one of them, and then the trial's really not covered, and then they put SAM, special administrative measures, on the attorneys. Not only the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, but also the attorneys can't speak. The attorneys can't go and be interviewed about this whole thing. And then the reason they give for that is, well, national security. We don't want to inspire other terrorist acts. But they were very clear that these 2 acted alone. So it's like, well, if they acted alone and they're not part of a larger network, then why would an attorney being interviewed about the case? So there's clearly something they don't want getting out. I mean, this is just a weird situation. It's just odd, and nobody really, because people think you're like insulting people's memory by asking questions. It's like, no, I'm just very curious about, and here's the other thing, and this is verifiable fact. The Tsarnaev family, Tamerlan, Dzhokhar, their grandfather, Rusli Tsarnaev, you're going to love this, because this is just fun, and it's factual. Rusli Tsarnaev, who's their uncle. He's not their grandfather, he's their uncle. Because I'll make this point and somebody will be like, it's actually their uncle, as if they've done anything. It's like, it's the same, Their uncle, Rusli Tsarnaev, married Samantha Fuller. Samantha Fuller is a daughter of Graham Fuller. Graham Fuller was a career, not only CIA agent, but the architect of our Mideast policy for the CIA. Big CIA guy. Big CIA guy's daughter marries Rusli Tsarnaev. His grandchildren, or his nephews, become the first terrorist attack on our soil since 9/11. Interesting. Very weird. Shadowy labyrinth of connections there. I don't know what that means. I can't tell you what it means. I know that that's a fact, and I know that that's very interesting for me, and it's an odd coincidence that this guy married into a CIA family, and his nephews end up having some type of relationship with the FBI that the FBI doesn't come out about, and then they end up doing this horrible thing in Boston. It's weird. And a mind like mine, it's hard to shut those things off.
Well, but I think that's the solution. Like you say, like this scares you at night, all of these things. I think the solution is doing what you do, which is asking why, talking about it, and you're able to say, hey, I'm just a comedian. and that kind of like, passes over the newspapers and all these people who try to deny or refute. Like, hey, I'm just a comedian. I'm just saying this thing looks interesting and it's funny. And which is what Jon Stewart would always say, right? So Jon Stewart really was the only actual news source in the country.
Yeah, it was very funny.
And if anyone ever called him on it, he said, "Oh no, I'm not news. I'm just a comedian." But he was actually the only news source. Everyone even said, "This is my news source."
Yeah.
And I think now, I think there was this wave where everyone was reading, like, let's say a decade ago, there was all these popular self-help books, and then you have, for the past 3 to 5 years, all of these popular intellectuals that kind of did the podcast, scene. And then now I think, though, the real voices are comedians like yourself, like some others who you're seeing them. Your podcast, I imagine, has been shooting up in downloads for the past 2 years. Because now this is the voice. It's the only voices people can trust, because you're.
Yeah, this video sucks. I don't care. It's terrible. Is there anything better? We got anything better on the? Oh dear
The
God.
final shape, it felt a little like a love letter at times.
Dear
we
God.
really thought about bringing that forward to the weapons.
Oh dear
like Kvastov,
God.
it's the first gun you get. There has to be the narrative bookends of the first gun I got in the game. It's here in the Pale Heart. It's like this old friend returned.
Help!
Yeah. And we pepper in the number 7 in as many places as we could. So it bounces 7 times. It's got a bunch of 7s in its stat. You get 7 bouncy bullets when you pick up an Orb of Power. Bungie has a long legacy of loving the number 7, and this felt like the right place for it.
Hi, I'm Luke from Bungie.
And I'm Shishka.
And today we're here to talk about July 7th, Bungie Day.
Yeah, Cold Storage.
Huh?
A remake of Halo Combat Evolved map Chillout, available on Xbox Live Marketplace for
200 points!
It's free, moron. It's a thank you to our fans for being oh so supportive.
How cool would it be if on Bungie Day, Microsoft decided to lower the price of the Legendary map pack from 800 points to 600 points?
What do you know? That's what they're gonna do.
Isn't that neat, kids?
Bungie announced in a tweet they were increasing the price of seasons from 1,000 silver to 1,200 silver. So when you buy $10 worth of silver, that being 1,000, you actually get 1,100 silver. That's so generous of them. Funny how that works too, because that's just short of the amount needed to buy a new expansion. So to buy an individual season, you need to purchase $15 worth of silver. And guess what? You thought a $5 increase was bad? Let's take a trip down to the Microsoft and Epic Game Store, where there is no $15 silver option.
I don't care. I have to take a shit, you know? Ooh, this is cool. Want to watch that later? I'm a Bard main, so. Oh, let's see what he has to say. Old Professor Jiang. I love Jiang.
Israel and China get along really, really well. And a lot of it is just the fact that transnational capital has brought the Chinese elite and the Israeli elite together. You go back to the Hezbollah Patriot attacks, right? How are they able to pull that off? And the answer is very simple, because the Israelis control the global supply chain secretly. And to do that, you need to work very hand in glove with the Chinese elite. And so this is something that's not really discussed. It's something that's really not well known, but Israel and China get along very, very well. Why is the world putting up with what's happening in Gaza? Because Gaza is going to be the site for the Ben Gurion Canal, right? The Ben Gurion Canal will replace the Suez Canal, and the Ben Gurion Canal will become the center of global trade. So once they have that in position, many nations stand to benefit, right? And so that's why no one's really speaking out against the genocide in Gaza, because it's just geopolitics, it's just capitalism. That's the way transnational capital works. If I got a PhD in the West and I had a faculty position teaching at American or Canadian or European university, there's actually no way I would think the way I do. I would be very much brainwashed into reciting Western imperialist propaganda. The problem, I think, in East Asia, where the intellectual elite has been colonized, really, by the almost antiquated political philosophy of the Western world. And because it's been colonized, East Asia has problems of its own indigenous philosophy, but I think East Asia has to do so if it is to thrive. You have these Chinese parents who spend millions of dollars immigrating to Canada just so that their kids can be abused by white kids, and it's just absolutely confusing. It's bewildering. I've spoken out against imperialism. I've spoken out against Zionism, and I'm thankful that I'm in China, so I'm allowed to speak this, because as you say, if I'm in the Western world, then I would have been fired a long time ago, and I would have been targeted a long time ago. If you're a white kid, you feel privileged and you can do whatever you want, and and it's hard for white people to appreciate that. But if you're a minority, you see this every day. And I said to myself, there's just absolutely no way I'm gonna have my kid like deal with this. My biggest failing in life is that I was always insecure. I grew up in a pretty poor and violent household. My father was a dishwasher, and he suffered a lot of racial abuse at his restaurant, and he took it out on me. We were a very poor family. My classmates made fun of me, and so I felt traumatized. It was like chronic stress. Right now, there's really no ideology in America, in the Western world anymore. It's just a blatant oligarchy, right? You've got the elite trying to steal as much from the people in the state as possible before the entire system collapses. The elite has become this toxic parasite on the nation state.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, good day, everyone. We are here with another show. Today we have a very, very interesting guest. That is Professor Jiang. We saw you on a YouTube channel that recently gets boosted in many of the people's algorithms. That's amazing, because you have very, very sensitive and very interesting topics. And you do a lot of lectures where you talk about historical things. The channel's called Predictive History, and you talk a lot about Zionism, religion, imperialism, all topics that Peter and myself find very interesting. You're also China-based, just as we are. I think you are also originally Western in that sense that you come from Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I come from the Netherlands. Peter comes from the United States, so we all share similarities in that sense. Professor Jiang, welcome to our small channel, and maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit for our audience.
Hi everyone. So, just to be clear, I'm actually not a professor. I do not have a PhD. I do not teach at a university. I teach in a high school to Chinese students. I only have a BA, but the internet calls me Professor Jiang, and my Chinese name is much too hard to pronounce, so we'll just go Professor Jiang. But yeah, so I was born in China, and when I was 6, our family went to Canada. We immigrated to Canada, Toronto. That's where I grew up. That's where I went to high school. And then for university, I went to Yale College to study English literature. And while at Yale, I was thinking of going to law school, but I want to visit China and learn Mandarin before enrolling in law school. So I came to Beijing in about 99, right after I graduated. And I was teaching English, and I fell in love with education in China. I've been here ever since, and I've worked in a variety of positions. I've worked as a teacher, of course, but I've also worked as a curriculum director. I've also worked as a principal. I've also worked as a teacher trainer. And because I have a family now, I have 3 young kids, I've decided to go back to teaching to spend more time with my kids. And so I've been teaching at my high school for about 4 years now. And I started to upload my lectures to YouTube, hoping to gain some attention. My wife and I were very ambitious. We're thinking maybe in a couple of years we'll get 5,000 subscribers. And it sort of blew up because I made a prediction that the United States would attack Iran. And so that got a lot of traction. And as you mentioned, Kareem, I discuss a lot of geopolitics. I discuss a lot of religion. I discuss a lot about secret societies. And as such, people have become very enamored with my channel, and that's drawn a lot of attention to me. And so that's who I am. That's what I do.
Very, very interesting. Sorry, I had myself muted. Yeah, very, very interesting. I can advise everybody who is following our channel to definitely go visit your channel. Our audience will probably love it. We focus a lot on imperialism, geopolitics. Peter and I are professors in the geopolitical economy department of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So we really like that stuff. And also you touch on things that are very, very sensitive where we are from. We're all the three of us are from in the West, touching on these very sensitive topics such as the Christianity, how it intertwines with geopolitics and imperialism, Zionism. You do a lot on Zionism. Very, very good. So I when I saw your channel and I saw you were actually teaching that stuff, just like Peter and I do, I was like, that stuff is really, really sensitive in the West. I mean, if you would teach that the things that you teach, for example, about Zionism, in front of a Western class, and you would put those lectures online, I wonder now in 2025 if you could actually keep your job. In fact, some people would even wonder if the police may not even pay you a visit, considering how sensitive these topics have become. Students that are protesting against Zionism are getting jailed and all that kind of stuff. People are losing their tenured professorships. So I was very curious about that. How do you see that? Do you also see that you have more freedom to teach these kind of things now that you are China based? That's my first question. And actually related to that is I saw an article of yours where you actually said, that was almost 10 years ago, where you said, well, we have media freedom in the West, and I will share this article with our audience. You said we have media freedom in the West, and that makes students very innovative. And I wonder now, almost 10 years later, if you regret writing that or if you still think the same way. So a bit of a long question. Sorry about that.
Right. So the short answer to your question is if I got a PhD in the West and I had a faculty position teaching at American or Canadian or European university, there's actually no way I would think the way I do. I would be very much brainwashed into reciting Western imperialist propaganda. So I went to Yale. And looking back at my time at Yale, I appreciate that Yale was an MK Ultra experiment. So when you go to a place like Yale, you are a certain personality. You are very opportunistic. You are very ambitious. You're almost hungry, desperate for success. And as such, you are easily indoctrinated into a certain framework and a certain ideology about the world that you carry with you for the rest of your life. And I know this because, I have a lot of friends who went to Yale, Harvard, and Princeton, and they think very differently from the way I think. And so the reason why I think very differently is I came to China, and being in China has allowed me an outside perspective on development in the Western world. And I've been very dismayed by the past 10 years, especially in 2016, 2020, when Bernie Sanders should have been the Democratic nominee, and I think he would have won if he had been a Democratic nominee. He was railroaded by the Democratic Party. It was extremely anti-democratic what they did to him in 2016 and 2020. And so that was one aspect. Another aspect is the sort of, after Trump won in 2016, the media had TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, and it started to align itself with the national security apparatus. Individuals like John Brennan were featured prominently by New York Times, by CNN, and the man is a neocon. He's a war hawk. And, I grew up thinking that the media was the ones who promoted the Pentagon Papers, Watergate, right? So the media was the fifth estate, and it held the powers that are the powers that be in check. And I worked as a journalist actually for a couple of years, very much believing that my duty was to report the truth and to hold power into check. And that's probably why I didn't last very long in the media system. I actually used to work for the Chronicle of Higher Education, so I know the Chinese University of Hong Kong very well. I actually visited you guys way back when I was a reporter. And I actually interviewed the president, and I was very impressed by what you guys do at that university. So I'm very happy to be talking with both of you. Yeah, so I mean, I've always had this deep respect for journalism, and so I was dismayed by how journalists started to, in the Trump years, started to align itself with the deep state, with the military-industrial complex, and so I became extremely disillusioned. I felt like the response to COVID was extremely problematic. There was no public accountability. There was no transparency about what happened, how COVID got released, its impact on the world, whether or not the vaccines were effective. And I feel as though today the mainstream media, all it does is gaslight people, right? So you look at the Ukraine war. I mean, like for 4 years, we were told that Ukraine is going to win this war, and that any day the Ukrainian army is going to march to Moscow and overthrow this hideous regime and install a democratic government. We're still told that today, even though you just look at the front lines. The Ukrainian front lines have basically collapsed, and Russia has essentially won the war. And it's basically won the war for the past year. So I've become extremely disillusioned by the media. I've become extremely disillusioned by my Yale education. And as such, I've been forced to reformulate a much more nuanced understanding of the world. And as such, I've spoken out against imperialism. I've spoken out against Zionism, and I'm thankful that I'm in China, so I'm allowed to speak this, because, as you say, if I'm in the Western world, then I would have been fired a long time ago, and I would have been targeted a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I can empathize with so much of that, because I grew up in the US and I absorbed, like any human does, the dominant ideology, the dominant view from peers, families, schools, etc. And, in some ways that was really good, because the ideals that you're taught in school, that, the claim is that the US government actually lives up to these ideals, but the ideals themselves are quite good in themselves. And the thing that was disillusioning was discovering in my, I guess, like mid to late teenage years and then 20s, that these ideals were not actually instantiated in the US, and rather quite the opposite. They're betrayed every day in dozens of ways by the US government and, you can call broadly the ruling class in the US. Those people with disproportionate political economic power in the U.S., which vitiates the whole promise of democracy. But so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that process of changing your ideology, because in my experience and the experience of friends of mine, there's not so many people that go from one view to a very different view. The way our brains work, cognitive conservatism, we tend to just stick with whatever we've been, we absorbed like a sponge as a kid. So I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to what that process felt like for you, your intellectual development, and how you got over the cognitive dissonance of, believing one thing, the dominant ideology, the conventional wisdom, and then then encountering contrary evidence which challenges that. Usually that's a very discomforting experience. How did you kind of get over that and continue on your journey of intellectual development?
Yeah, so I keep on saying this, but Yale is really the most successful, most effective MK Ultra experiment ever conducted in the United States. Because I went to Yale, and I'm this poor Chinese immigrant who lucked into Yale. I got lucky. I'll say it. And if I were to apply, like at this time in history, there's no way I would have gotten into Yale. Okay, so I got very lucky. But while I was in Yale, I absorbed the liberal meritocratic values of Yale, right? Which is that the world is meritocracy, that liberal reason always wins out, that if you are able to debate effectively, the reasonable argument will always carry the day. The world is just, honorable, and good. And I believe that. The problem is that after I returned to China and I started to work in education and in media, I was not very successful. I felt as though like there were forces keeping me back. And at first, I just thought that, the reason why is that America is a meritocracy and China is not a meritocracy. And as such, I became much more pro-Western and I became much more anti-China. And I had this like love-hate relationship with China for a long, long time. But being in China, being a failure for most of my young life. I mean, I tried many different professions. I was a journalist, I was a documentary filmmaker, I was a United Nations official, and I failed at all of my professions. And by the time I was like in my mid 20s, I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was an alcoholic. And one moment that woke me up is like literally woke me up is I was sleepwalking. I had just suffered through a very traumatic relationship with a woman that I loved, and it was a codependent relationship. It was extremely depressing for me, and so I was living alone, and I was sleepwalking. And of course, I didn't know I was sleepwalking, but then I found myself in the blizzard, basically naked, and that woke me up and says, I need to change my life. I need to start rebuilding myself. And so I started to reflect deeply on my Yale education, and I recognized that there were severe limitations to my Yale education. And I'll just list a few, okay? The first is that Yale education prioritizes analytical intelligence above emotional intelligence. So it made me extremely arrogant. It made me extremely narrow-minded. The second thing about the Yale education is that it teaches you a very rigid way of seeing the world. And you don't really appreciate the diversity, the openness, the dynamic quality of what it means to be human. The third thing about Yale is that it makes you a very materialistic person. So I began to question my Yale education, and I engaged in a long process of rejecting my Yale education, and I became much more interested in esoteric knowledge, in religion, in spirituality. I began to much more embrace the full spectrum of human potential, of human diversity, and I started to engage in more, friendships. So I was looking more at a person as a friend, as opposed to someone who I could derive benefit from. Because Yale makes you a very utilitarian person. But the major turning point in my life was meeting my wife, because my wife believed in me, and I recognized that my biggest failing in life is that I was always insecure. I grew up in a pretty poor and violent household. My father was a dishwasher, and he suffered a lot of racial abuse at his restaurant, and he took it out on me. And we were a very poor family. My classmates made fun of me, and so I felt traumatized. It was like chronic stress, and so I wanted to succeed, to escape my poverty, to escape my loneliness, and that's what drove me to Yale, and that's what drove me to success. And then when I met my wife, who just loved me for who I was, because at that time I was poor, I was unemployed, I didn't have that much potential, but we just clicked. We were like soulmates. It was as though we were like looking for each other all our lives, and we didn't really know it. And just being with her, and then we had our first child, and then I was like, you know what, I have a family now, and I might have all this trauma, I might have all these issues from the past, but I really need to focus on rebuilding myself and providing a good livelihood for my family. And that's when I started to go back into teaching, and then things start to click. So I'll say that what drives a lot of people in this world, what drives a lot of evil, is just trauma. The fact that when they were young, they were traumatized. I mean, like, the fact of the matter is, like, the rich are probably even more traumatized than the poor, right? Because they grew up in these very aloof, very violent households where they're expected to succeed from day one. I mean, certainly those were the sort of classmates I met at Yale. And like, even though they're successful, I don't think they're happy at all. In fact, I know a lot of successful people who are not at all happy. So it's a very long process, but I'm very thankful for this process, because obviously with this process, I cannot have met my wife. So I mean, like, that's certain wisdom that I learned in life, where every traumatic opportunity is an opportunity to grow as well, to find strength in your pain. And so I'm very thankful for the life I've had. And right now, I'm just very heavily invested in sharing my life, my wisdom with as many people as possible. In terms of politics, my major political breakthrough moment, the moment when I turned against the American empire, is 2020, when there was this Democratic primary, and there were lots of really interesting candidates in that Democratic primary, including Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang. I was personally a huge supporter of Andrew Yang. And I thought, this is great. This is what democracy is about. Like different politicians proposing different solutions, and then the people decide what's the best path forward. And I was sure that Bernie Sanders was going to win. And after he won Nevada, I was like, yes, American democracy works. And of course, after Nevada, Obama made this phone call to South Carolina station. James Clyburn came out to support Biden. And Biden at this point had no national organization. He had no funding. He was completely adrift. And then he went on to win the Democratic primary. And then COVID happened, so Biden didn't have to campaign. He stayed in his basement all the time and let his surrogates, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Obama go campaign for him. And then he won the election. I was like, this is not how democracy is meant to be. This is a complete denial of the people. People want change. They want more populism. They want more economic opportunities. And Bernie Sanders would have provided that to them. And so that just, I just gave up because, at this time, remember, Democrats are saying that Trump is Hitler and we need to do everything possible to defeat Trump. I'm like, yeah, but then why did you put up this old guy who can barely put two sentences together, who is not at all popular, and who has proven himself to be completely incompetent? If you're serious about defeating Hitler, I promote Biden. So I just completely became disillusioned, and I've become disillusioned ever since. And so now, after the 2020 election, I had to slowly rebuild a more nuanced understanding of how the world works, and that's what's led me to today.
Yeah. Lots of similarities actually. I can feel in your experience. I recently had a discussion with another content creator called Dimitri Lascaris.
Oh, he's great. I watch his show all the time.
Yeah,
He's fantastic.
yeah, he's
great.
Great.
Listen. I wish I had 10% of the courage he does, okay? Because he's actually challenging Zionism, whereas now and then I talk trash about it, okay? But he's actually doing all he can to stand up against Zionism, the project of Zionism, which can get you killed. The things he's done. I have just tremendous respect for him.
Yeah, and Dimitri, I always call him brother of the show. We often talk about things also from a psychological perspective. Good friend of the show, and we recently had a conversation about my experience as a half Dutch, half Algerian kid growing up in the Netherlands, and also a form of trauma that I had in my very young past, where you actually try to hide your identity because it was so marginalized in the part where I came from, and I also wondered, if I could go back, would I change it? But then I realized no, because I would not see the world as I see the world today if I did not go through that experience. So in that sense, I'm very similar to you. But I also think you would enjoy reading our Substack, because let me quickly share it. We often talk about these things on our Substack. You talked about how you are conditioned in our societies to be unhappy, to be where we actually are abused. I just recently wrote an article called "We Embrace Psychopathy as Culture," and we call it capitalism. I'm very anti-capitalist, Professor Zhang, and it touches on a lot of these things that you also say, like how we are conditioned actually into a very abusive system. And I there's so many points you made that I find so interesting and so relatable. I think we all went through a kind of existential crisis, especially the past 10 years or so. What for me was very radicalizing indeed was 9/11. That it started with 9/11, but I still believed in that, what you say as well, in that kind of democracy and that Western human rights and nonsense. And we were so successfully conditioned in our education system, in our culture. And when you said, as a Chinese kid going to an Ivy League school, I often discuss with my class how one of the not just the media, but one of the most successful ways of the West to shape minds around the world is with its hegemony in the educational realm, and in particular Ivy League schools. I always wonder, why is China sending its brightest to Ivy League schools to come back completely propagandized with Western supremacism, especially in the social sciences? I'm like, please stop it. We had a conversation with Professor Michael Hudson,
Sure.
and he said the same thing. He said, I have been saying for years that China should stop doing that. And I agree. I think it's very important that China stops doing that. And for me also, like you, living in China now for approximately 15 years has completely changed the way I see the West. It's once you have that outside perspective, you see it in a very, very different way. And you see also what you're saying, like how much our system actually conditions us into that abuse, that normalization of abuse of our system. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Maybe you have some thoughts. Yeah.
So, last year, I have 3 kids, and we're not very happy with the education system in China. There's like 50 kids in the classroom, and I'm a very progressive educator. I've always been very progressive in terms of education. I want my kids to just run around, enjoy the outdoors, and so we thought about moving back to Canada for our children's upbringing. And so this summer, I took my kids back to Canada, and just day in day out, we just experience racial abuse after racial abuse. And this was my life growing up. But when you're young and this entire culture is racist like that, you don't really appreciate it, but it becomes embedded into you. It's like toxic. It traumatizes you. But like I saw my kids, and I rolled my eldest, who's like 7 at the time, into a soccer camp, and the kids were bullying him every single day. They were like kicking the ball at his face. They were like being malicious about it. It was just pure malice, and that's just the Western society, where if you're a white kid, you feel privileged and you can do whatever you want, and it's hard for white people to appreciate that. But if you're a minority, you see this every day. And I said to myself, there's just absolutely no way I'm gonna have my kid deal with this. I mean, like I had to deal with this, and again, because it led me to my wife ultimately. There's nothing I would change about my life, but why would I put my kids through such trauma? And you're absolutely right in that it's kind of weird in that you have these Chinese parents who spend millions of dollars immigrating to Canada just so that their kids can be abused by white kids, and it just can become absolutely confusing. It's bewildering to me. But I grew up in the West, and I know the toxic effects of this sort of pervasive racism, and that's why I moved out of the Western world. But that's also why I refuse to have my kids also go back.
Mm. I can totally relate to that. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, getting back to that well, actually a related anecdote. Ha-Joon Chang, the economist or economic historian at Cambridge, he visited New York and gave a talk some like 15 years ago, and somebody asked him at the end of the talk, who is from Korea. He said, what is your view of Korea's future prospects? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? And he said, basically, the thing that makes me pessimistic, or the thing that makes me worry, is that the economic boom that the Republic of Korea experienced was engineered by engineers and lawyers, not by economists. And now top Korean students are going to the US to get economics PhDs and go back to Korea to help them design their economic policies. And that's what I'm most worried about. So getting back to that question of the appeal of sending your kids to Ivy League schools in the West, or Cambridge, Oxford, et cetera, in England, whatever. My question is, in 2017, I read this mind-blowing paper, Beaconism and the Trumpian Metamorphosis of Chinese Liberal Intellectuals, about how people on the liberal right in China, some of them at least, came to view Trump as a kind of exemplar of liberalism in the global sense, not U.S. style liberalism, obviously. And so they came to see the liberal Democrats in the U.S. as a kind of avatar of socialism and therefore bad, and Trump was fighting against them for pure free market capitalism and against like woke ideology, etc. And that was just such a mind-blowing thing to learn, because I just had no idea about, kind of the ideological splits among intellectuals in China today. But that paper's some 10 years old now, almost 10 years old. And my guess would be that given the state of the US now compared to 2016, 2017, I would imagine a lot of those same liberal intellectuals have sort of lost or in their eyes, Trump has lost his sheen, and perhaps maybe even liberalism more broadly has lost its sheen somewhat. What's your view? Do you think that guess is grounded at all, or are like conservatives and liberals in the U.S., they continue on with their zombie ideology regardless of what reality throws in their face?
Yeah, I mean, like, my attitude is pretty blatant, which is that right now there's really no ideology in America, in the Western world anymore. It's just a blatant oligarchy, right? You've got the elite trying to steal as much from the people in the state as possible before the entire system collapses. The elite has become this toxic parasite on the nation state. So I think it's very clear what's happening, and Trump is just trying to be one of those parasites as well, right? So it's like Peter Turchin uses the phrase elite overproduction, right? So there's almost a civil war going on in the Western world, and it's not really ideological. It's just like like the world is collapsing. Who gets to be the parasite at the end of the days? I mean, like, that's basically it. I also respond to this ideological debate in East Asia. The problem in East Asia is there isn't that sort of like long.
All right,
proud
that's all well and good.
traditional political
But I want to watch. What is it called? Alondra. I want to watch some shit about reptilians and demons and shit. Where is it? Yeah, this guy.
Podcast.
Let's hear about it.
So it's been a while since I've been able to do a live interview, and I'm so happy that we're here in New York. I'm speaking to someone I've known for almost 10 years, actually, that we know each other from survivor groups, and he is in New York just for a few days, so it was just very lucky. Everything just fell into place that we were able to set this up and do this. So very excited about our interview. As you know, I pay out of pocket for these podcasts. I really appreciate your support. I've had some amazing support from you. Thank you so much. I just want to really acknowledge you for the funds that are coming in. And of course, as you know, every little bit helps. So if you want to make a small donation just to support the content, I very, very much appreciate it. So my guest today is Alondra Markman, and he's a survivor like myself, or maybe a little bit differently. So welcome, Alondra.
Thanks, Annika.
It's good to see you again.
You too.
Yeah, so we were really hanging out, maybe like you said it was 2015, 2016 when we were spending more time together.
Mm-hmm.
So very happy to see you again. I'm glad we got reconnected.
Me too.
And, we know each other as survivors of SRA, and I guess maybe we can start with having you tell us a little bit, an overview of, your life and SRA experiences.
Sure.
Thanks.
I was born into a satanic family, so this was on both sides of the family, going back quite a few generations, as far as I'm aware. probably going back many generations, but it gets difficult to know. In her front life, sometimes with other survivors, I'll say front life and back life. So the front life is kind of your public life that everybody sees, and your back life is what most people don't see and where a lot of the abuse happens. So in front life, my mother was a sex worker. Yeah, by choice, I mean, supposedly. And also an activist on behalf of mental patients. And those were kind of the two big things. In back life, she was a slave to some other members of her family and also non-family members who were part of the cult networks. So it's very complex. And my father, in front life, was one of her clients. And they never had any formal relationship. But it's since come to my understanding that he was also from a bloodline that the cult network was interested in. And so their pairing was arranged behind the scenes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know I've also observed that the people that when they took an interest in me, they first had to know about my blood, which I didn't know anything about. And I don't even know what they did and how they measured it, and I know that you even have a very unusual blood type. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, AB negative, which certain aspects of the network take a very deep interest in, unfortunately for me. Yeah.
So did you grow up with just your mother, or?
In front life, yes, it was primarily me and my mother, and that's essentially what I was coached to say. You know, I live in a single parent home with my mother. In reality, I was surrounded by people all the time, other handlers in the cult network and different types of sex workers, and I was made to be a sex worker or sex trafficked. So there were a lot of different kinds of adults around, and so some of them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and some of them had family roles with me, or they would play the roles of certain family figures.
Oh, I see. But you were trafficked right from when you were very young?
Yes, I was.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
So that was your first role, because your mother even publicly was a sex worker, and then you immediately got sex trafficked.
Yes.
And so in the network setting, in the back, backstage, these are SRA families, so it's the sex trafficking. Was there other stuff happening already at a very young age as well?
Yeah, a wide variety of torture and abuse was happening. I suppose I can just get right into it since we're here for this purpose. Yeah, I witnessed not just sex trafficking, but a lot of different types of violence and torture. Yeah, some of it lethal to the participants' murders. So that was also happening.
And you were there, did you feel that you were not going to get killed, or was there sometimes that you might have gotten killed? Did you feel that because of maybe your blood or whatever reason, or because your mother was in it, or did you feel that there was a purpose there for you?
Yeah, several questions in there. Well, there's a complex relationship between hypnotic suggestions and programming to commit suicide and the practical need of the cult to keep people alive to use them. So there's this push-pull that a lot of us, especially when we're born into it, I mean, we experience this from birth, where we're being told to kill ourselves and to live at all costs at the same time. And that's part of the cognitive dissonance and the psychic torture aspect of it, just a glimpse.
Yeah, like in your day life, in your front life, did you even know?
I was in and out of knowledge. Of course, you can't forget things like this, not really. They can fade from awareness, and that's usually what people call repressed memory. I mean, but of course my body would be in horrible pain, and I was aware that I was missing time. So I couldn't not be aware of it, but I stayed as unaware as possible because there was very severe torture. If I showed that I remembered an experience, there was usually very severe torture. So I learned to hide. If I did have a memory of something, I learned to hide it. And then over time, I learned to lie to myself and, kind of actually repress some of the memories more deeply.
So you're talking as a child, if you remembered something and somebody found out, then you would be tortured to make sure that you would forget again, or that you would never even start talking about it?
Yeah. And I mean, maybe I should pause, back up a little bit. I was being fragmented into different personalities from the time I was born. From the time I was an infant, I mean, even before the formation of any coherent personality, my experience and my sense of self was being fragmented into lots of different alters. One thing that would happen if I started telling, about a certain torture experience or a certain, sexual experience that I had had, that aspect of me that was telling would be shamed and punished and banished, and made into a separate altar that I wasn't supposed to access. So I have many dozens of altars, some of them quite well thought out, and with a lot of thought put into them, and some of them just sort of stopgap experiences, like, oh, that was just a shut up altar, and it's like, it's a named individual within me, but its entire purpose is just to stop some certain story from coming out.
And so just to ground your beginning of your life, you were in Long Island, basically.
Yeah, most of what I'm describing is taking place in the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that where you lived?
Yeah.
Okay. So you lived on the Lower East Side, and I'm sorry, when was this happening? When were you born?
My birth certificate may be a little bit off. I'm still learning a lot about my background. I have other family and siblings who were not supposed to exist, that I was never allowed to be conscious of. So I'm still piecing things together. But my birth certificate says I was born in '86. So I guess I'm 37 or so.
Okay, so very young.
Yeah. And everything I'm describing was already happening, I mean, from birth up until like around 4 years old was when these kind of dissociative systems were pretty solidified. So this is very, very early. Like most of this is pre-conscious.
So your Lower East Side and the people around you, some of them are presenting as family members, even if maybe they're not, but they're basically, you're surrounded by handlers.
Yeah.
While your mother is continuing to be a sex worker?
Yeah.
And you're her only child?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not actually her only child, but...
But you're the only one that lived in that place with her?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming that because she was single also, that you were there's just a lot of people around you all the time that were not
This is
her.
true, yeah.
Good people too?
Not so much. When I was a little bit older, my mother had a boyfriend who was not in the cult. So he was a very positive person for me, and he actually later adopted me as an adult. And so that's part of the reason I'm sane today. I did have a few healthy people around, healthy adults, teachers at school, people outside the family, and that one boyfriend. But he wasn't allowed to see her for very long because the handlers didn't like me having a positive role model. So he was cut off from me for most of my childhood.
Sorry to hear that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so it's these people that are your handlers, were there any that you were particularly close to? I mean, obviously, I was very close to some, so.
Yeah, I had very deep bonds with several of them. One, whose name was Patrick, was like an uncle figure to me. Yeah, we were very, very closely bonded. I think, through all the torture and shame and confusion, I think there was also some real emotional bonding there, positive emotional bonding. So yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings. But he would be introduced as my uncle sometimes, like if we were out in public, and I was alone with him. That's how he would be described.
But for sure he was a handler because he was also abusing you and he was also training you?
Yeah. Yeah, I was being trained for a wide variety of things. Most obviously to accept sexual violence, to perpetrate sexual violence, to accept and to perpetrate physical violence. I was being trained as a killer. I was being trained also as a breeder for the cult. So I was supposed to create many children, and I did create many children after I passed through puberty later on.
So this is now you're talking, after you passed through puberty, so this is in your teens now.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but I'm just saying I was basically being trained for constant sexual activity from the moment I was born, like absolutely constant. And that was normalized as much as possible in my household.
Oh, with your mother as a sex worker, it's kind of normalized already, yeah?
Yeah.
But she also had a nonprofit.
Yeah, she did. She also did a lot of really good work, actually, as a civil rights activist on behalf of people with mental disabilities, especially people who had been brain damaged by psychiatric practices like electroshock therapy.
How interesting.
Yeah. So that's well, I don't want to get, just let it flow, see what happens. Yeah, the cult network uses electricity, electric torture, electroshock quite pervasively.
Yeah.
So that was the case for my mother, it was the case for me.
And me.
Sorry to hear that. But then also in Front Life, she went through medically prescribed, like mainstream psychiatric electroconvulsive therapy, which is a whole different thing, similar and related. I mean, part of the idea with that was that it would discredit her.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stigma associated with mental health treatment.
Of course, yeah.
So, in spite of the fact that her issues came from her circumstances, you know, she was kind of isolated and made to feel crazy, and went through quite a few mental health treatment experiences, mainstream ones. Some of those were before I was born, so I don't, yeah, I wasn't there for some of them, but she went through many electroconvulsive therapy treatments at psychiatric hospitals, in addition to what was happening at home and in the background.
Well, I've worked with several people. You know, I was never in a psychiatric institution. I was never diagnosed even. You know, I was just in therapy. But I work with several people who were survivors that have spent a lot of time in psychiatry and have a lot of, and had handlers right there on the unit, making sure basically that they're not remembering it. It seems to be always the same story.
Yeah, that was definitely the case.
So your mother was really, in a large sense, she was very much a victim. She was very much on the victim side of the network, except that she also abused you?
She did, yeah. Yeah, we had an incestuous relationship from birth also.
Yeah. That must be so complex.
I'm glad it's over.
Yeah, my mother also was very much like a victim, always very sexualized, and she also abused me, you know, but she presented very much as a victim on the outside. And of course she was, at some point, she was not so much in her adult life when she was my mother. She wasn't really being victimized, but she put herself in these situations all the time where, at the very least, she got very humiliated.
Yeah, it was made clear to me from the age that I could even hold the thought that my mother was a token and a pawn, and I mean, she would be raped in front of me and beaten in front of me, and you know, it was, yeah, I mean, they wanted me to know that she, you know, was at the beck and call of others, yeah.
And then you're getting the message that you don't have a mother.
Also.
Mm-hmm. So, were some of the handlers perhaps better parental figures, or?
I guess in some senses, yeah. Some of them were more coherent, and so I was able to bond with them more consistently. That's true. Yeah.
But the rape was coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
They were all guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
The normalization of that sexuality with children, you know. In my public role, I was even supposed to promote that, promote the sexualization. But you were supposed to be doing that very much behind the scenes, being an object as well as a perpetrator. And do you think that you were being groomed to stay in the network?
Definitely, yeah. I was supposed to be a breeder for the whole rest of my life after puberty, and I was supposed to, you know, in the cult network way of looking at things. I was supposed to be programming others to have similar experiences, to be breeders themselves. It was perceived in me that I would make a very good handler myself, that I would make a very good programmer. And so a lot of my training was in that direction as well.
Right. Well, actually, I know you to be a very creative, artistic person. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I mean, not that you don't have many talents, but mostly I know that you have poetry workshops and poetry classes, and you write poetry yourself, and you're also a great musician. I've actually experienced that. And not just one instrument too, you know, many instruments, and really beautiful music that you make.
That also runs in my family. My mother was a piano player as well.
Oh.
And yeah, when she was growing up, she actually was in piano competitions and things, and thought she might make a career out of it. I think that may be what she was being groomed for early in her life. Yeah.
I mean, what a turn though. If she was being groomed to be a pianist and then ends up as a sex worker.
Yeah, quite a turn. I mean, she was heartbroken, naturally. I mean, heartbreak is part and parcel of all these experiences. But yeah, I think she really hoped to be a major classical concert pianist. and that was a dream that she dearly cherished.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you are the creative person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also on both sides of my family. My biological father also plays a lot of instruments and sings and paints and writes and stuff like that. So,
Really?
yeah.
So, yes, we talked about that somewhat, but so do you have a sense of what you were supposed to be on the outside, like your front?
Well, a few things were. It seemed like it was constantly changing, but I guess what what my handlers and my mother had sort of settled on by the time I was becoming a teenager was that I might be an actor. I might be. There was talk about going into some sort of comedy thing, being on Saturday Night Live, and that was appealing to me, and thought about it a little bit, and so that may have been a public role that I was being groomed for a little bit.
How interesting. I mean, it's sort of like within the network, these possibilities are all real.
Yeah.
So, do you remember getting like trained? Because I do, like for singing and
yeah,
everything.
well, I guess I should, yeah. I worked as a model as a child and an actor. I was supposed to be working as an actor from a young age, from childhood. I did actually work as a model. I was in a lot of advertisements and magazines and things.
As a child?
As a child,
Mhm.
yeah. Supposedly I was just noticed at random in a Starbucks in downtown Manhattan, like, oh, you have a very photogenic child, like, maybe you want to have him be a model. I mean, now I know this is sort of prearranged.
Right. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's the
but
story.
that's the story that I was supposed to tell. Like, oh, we met this nice man in the Starbucks, and it sounds very normal.
The next thing, wow, you're all over.
Yeah.
Advertising everywhere.
Yeah. So I did a lot of magazine advertisements. I did a little bit of TV. Of course, I never saw any of the money from this. It was like totally laundered away, which is infuriating.
And your mother didn't see it either.
I don't think so.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I was supposed to be an actor. I had auditions for different films. I remember I was supposed to be in a film called Dead Man Walking, I think, or Dead Man on Campus, something like that.
Dead Man on Campus.
Yeah.
I don't know these films.
They
but
tell
yeah.
on themselves with these titles a little bit. And the movie came out. It was produced. It's out there with another child actor, not me, because I totally froze during the audition process, and I didn't do what I was coached to do. So I think that kind of threw things off a little bit. And I went through the requisite torture for being a failure and all this stuff. And I didn't do a lot of modeling or acting after that. So I guess I was on a different track. But it was the thing that I found really challenging. Like, the modeling was easy because I didn't really have to talk. It was mostly still photographs. The challenge came when I had to actually talk and have lines as an actor. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be silent and not use my voice, and this is like going against that programming. And I just couldn't, it was mental overload, because if I was using my voice publicly, all sorts of stuff would come out that I wouldn't want to come out. And so that's basically why I froze. I couldn't do it, so it's understandable as part of the programming. But if I could get past that hurdle, if I could learn to use my voice essentially as a lie, if I could get through that, that's a major crucible. And if you do get through it, then you're basically on your way to a career as a satanically supported actor. But I couldn't do it, I guess. And from then on, my voice was very, very shut down, to the point where when I got away from my mother later on as a teenager, I was practically nonverbal.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. It was almost like you're not successful at lying enough, so you couldn't even dissociate enough, really, because I did some, not public, I had a performance singing, but I never acted that, but they were preparing me for that also. But it was almost like I felt like I was acting when I was sold to men. I was, going around with this big politician in Germany. I was acting too, but I always fully believed it in the moment. And I think that's how the dissociation, the part that I had been made into to be my persona, was going to be the sort of light and fun and sexy. I was 10. but I was that persona around him. And then I also found a lot of pleasure in there because he also really was very nice to me. And I think that was a big hook for me, that these people looked up to me, or they, because they knew that I'm going to be a star. And so they were already, so my treatment was just so much better compared to before. But I was completely dissociated, and then believing it 100% in the moment. Like what you're describing, it almost sounds like you couldn't quite fully 100% believe it, like you weren't dissociated enough.
I guess not. Thank goodness.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I was ultimately not dissociated enough either. You know, that I mean, it seems that if you have this this connection to truth somewhere, for whatever reason, because the way that you were raised, it sounds like you shouldn't have. You know, it's purely. Sometimes it's just pure spirit. It's not. You know, I had this person taking care of me in the first 3 years of my life, and I felt loved by her, and I knew what it was like to be loved. But you had something that you couldn't do it. It's very interesting to me that the way that you speak about your voice, that you were meant to lie, and that you froze because you're just not dissociated enough, and then somehow shut down completely. Like if there's no truth, there's nothing. You know?
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah. So then, yeah, I was probably about 9 at that time that I'm describing freezing and botching the audition. Yeah, they put me in different roles where, non-speaking roles. It's funny how normal acting terms kind of blend with these very abnormal things. So then I was sort of pulled back, and I was used. I was still used sometimes for theatrical purposes, for entertainment, but usually in a sexually exploitative way or in a silent way. I remember being used for a lot of different gatherings, parties, like as a sex slave, and essentially as an actor, but mostly a mute one. So that was definitely the case for some of those years, pre-puberty, 10, 11. And then they started sending me to a breeding compound.
A breeding compound?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that? I can guess, but
it's a dedicated facility for breeding human people. In my case, this was in Jalisco in Mexico.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So I'd be brought down there once I hit puberty, and I was on all sorts of steroids and aphrodisiacs and drugs, and I mean it's a very intensive physical program that they put you through when you're slated to be a breeder. They try to induce puberty as early as possible, and they put you on different sexual enhancement drugs and different mind-numbing drugs, and it really turns you into I mean, all you can think about is sex. It's because of all the drugs that you're on and the environment that you're in, and that's the idea. I mean, if you're in a breeder role, you just basically have sex constantly, or you're raped, more properly, just every day, all day. So that was the case for me. Yeah, starting around 12 or 13.
So was that place like a lab?
I often compare it to a monastery, to be honest. It was like a satanic monastery. It had kind of a feeling of a cloister.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it was a breeding
facility. Yeah.
So there were other children like you?
Many, many other children, yeah. And I would have to rape them, be raped by them. Mostly other young girls who had just hit puberty, but also grown women, older women, all sorts of people.
So it's a monastery where it's not random sex, but it's sex everywhere all the time.
For me, that was the experience. I think there were different roles that I didn't get to experience as much going on there, but yeah, for me it was basically that.
And it wasn't random, it was always someone looking over your shoulder and directing you?
Pretty much, yeah. If not in person in the room, then through a camera or a two-way mirror or something.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually hadn't heard about the existence of such a place before. I mean, I've heard a lot, obviously, working with people.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few people I can name in connection with this. Maybe not at this time, but some of them are famous or moderately famous people. One of them is a major philanthropist in the Seattle area.
Really?
Yeah.
That is connected to that program. That is to say that they have like a big role in it, or?
Yeah, a major role. So the philanthropist I just mentioned, I called her the abbess. She was basically the director, as far as I could tell. I mean, of course, this is from a child's perspective, so hard to say what's really going on. But from my perspective, she was the abbess of this monastery. And basically her word was absolute, and whatever she said went. And for me, that was usually, various forms of, just sexual functioning. I mean, I would often be chained up for sometimes days or weeks at a time, and they just bring in women one after the other.
How dehumanizing.
Yeah.
I do relate. I mean, I was also supposed to be, that persona that was age 9, from 9 to 10. It was supposed to be a wild sex thing. So I was drugged all day long. All these different kinds of drugs, these little pills I was taking all the time. Also to just make sure that I was always constantly feeling sexual and everything. I don't know what they were. I know they were uppers. And then I was also, but as the persona, even made to participate even in some rituals. But this is all age 9, age 10. So it's kind of really concise for me in the period that this was happening.
Yeah, I should also say, I'm calling this a monastery pretty intentionally. It wasn't just sexual, there was a lot of ritual associated with it. And basically, to produce the sort of children that they were interested in, they believed that different forms of black magic were necessary. And so there was a lot of careful planning around that, and there was a lot of ritual involved. Prayers and sacrifices and killings, all sorts of things going into this process, basically, so that I would conceive what they considered desirable children.
So, and this, do you think that is a lot to do with your blood?
I think a lot of it has to do with that. Yeah, they're very interested in bloodlines. I mean, they're also just very interested in people who can survive. I mean, a lot of other people, other boys, for instance, I would just see them dying. From just sheer exhaustion, from stress, from all kinds of things. But I was one of the ones who was just there year after year.
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry.
Thanks.
So you were taken to Mexico, obviously, but you were still officially living in New York City?
Officially, yeah.
And then did you also go to school?
I did. I had many aspects of a normal life in my front life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be taken away from New York sometimes for weeks at a time, during summer breaks, for instance, obviously, or maybe not obviously. But yeah, I'd be brought back to New York for a lot of the school year, and I'd have a relatively normative experience in school during the winters.
Yes, and then on the breaks, that same with me, like for that year anyway. I was gone the whole summer, I was gone for every vacation, and then that was when the training was happening. Or what, in your case, what was it?
Yeah, training, breeding. I was brought all over the world, and different people were brought to me also, because this breeding process is very intricate, it's very delicate. They do a tremendous amount of genealogical research. They have agents all over the globe who are looking for certain bloodlines, but also certain psychic characteristics, other kinds of, I'm not privy to everything they're looking for, obviously. But this is a very global program. And so I would sometimes, if it was deemed helpful to their plans, I'd be brought to other places, other countries, or they would bring in women and girls from outside the US to me.
And like, okay, so genealogically, you're Jewish mostly?
Mostly. Yeah, according to Ancestry.com, like 95% or 90-something percent Ashkenazi Jewish, yeah.
And so, can you talk a bit, because this is so specific, right? We're talking about bloodlines. I mean, for a lot of people, that doesn't even mean anything at all. Like, who cares usually? So can we just talk a little bit about that, or what you know?
Sure. Well, I'm no expert in this area, but I do have a lot of experience with people who are.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So there are different schools of black magic. This is my understanding so far. Again, I'm not interested in black magic. I don't know a ton about it. Like, I haven't really researched it on my own, but for some purposes, the Jewish bloodlines are considered essential to the process, basically. It's like you need a Jewish person to have the desired result of your spell.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure how much is superstition and how much is real. but that was definitely the case. In many cases, as I mentioned before this interview when we were talking, they need specifically a descendant of Solomon. So apparently I qualify for that. I have enough of a direct blood relationship to the historical Solomon that they could use me for these rituals.
Well, I want to stay a little bit with your experience also, because you also, okay, so and pretty much everyone that I know, that I speak with, was also trained to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that there are some, and that was also part of your experience, that are trained as soldiers, children
Mhm.
that are trained as soldiers, that is to say more deeply into the Delta programming.
Yeah.
And then one person I actually interviewed, Chantal Frey, she didn't speak about that with me, but she has spoken about that, I believe in her book, but maybe also in other interviews for sure, that she was also used for a spectacle. She actually described a star. It was a birthday present for him, and a famous movie star, and she had to fight a large man to the death.
Mm-hmm.
And when we spoke, you mentioned that something similar had happened to you.
Yes, this is true. I was also trained for fighting, and well, very dirty fighting to kill. And I had a whole period of my earlier life. I guess this was just before I was, or it overlapped a little bit with my modeling career. I was sold to a man that I knew as Louis Valou, and I feel okay using the name because I'm pretty sure it's a pseudonym. I very much doubt it's his legal name. But this guy named Louis Valou was essentially part of organized crime in Lower Manhattan in Chinatown. And he was one of my handlers growing up. And I had a very intense relationship with him on many levels. There was a period where he was grooming me essentially to take his position. And
in the mafia then?
Essentially, I mean, I'm not totally clear on the details, but it's some aspect of the mafia or organized crime. And I had to do a lot of physical violence towards other children as part of his initiations. And some of that culminated in public death matches, cage matches with other children in Chinatown for paying audiences.
How would an audience, I mean, this must all be inside the network. I can't imagine that there'd be something like that anybody could ever figure out, and it's happening right downtown.
I'm imagining the invitations were very exclusive, yeah. I strongly doubt any random people would find out about it.
And what kind of places would this even happen in?
All sorts of venues.
Really?
I mean, to be honest, I was often drugged and blindfolded and taken to these places, so it's often hard to say where exactly they are. I know some of them are in wealthy enclaves outside the city, like in Westchester County, upstate a little bit. I was taken to places like that. But then there are also versions of it that happen right in Chinatown, just in basements in Chinatown, which is, it seems like just some sort of racist fantasy that someone would have, but it really does happen there.
And the idea that you would want to go and see two children fight to the death, that it could only be network, where the people that are really in it and believe in it, they don't even see a child in a child. They don't even see what a child is. They just see creatures that are below them or something.
That's true. Yeah, like cock matches, like animals fighting, pretty much like that.
Except more exclusive.
More exclusive, more expensive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you did tell me that you saw some prominent people present at some of these.
I did.
Events.
Yeah. There different politicians would show up sometimes, actors would show up sometimes. And a lot of the really wealthy people who are anonymous would show up, of course. And some of them, I still don't know their names, but people in positions of power within the cult. I've been thinking through, different names and if I want to name people and
totally
all that
fine,
stuff.
and we can cut it out if you change your mind. Also, that's no
Okay.
problem. But also, let's just let me ask you: is it like when we're talking about levels, right? Is it like on the local level? Is it on the state level? Is it on the national level? Is it on the international level?
It's on every level. Yeah. I think I mean, I saw people who I didn't necessarily know, but I understood them to be prominent people of other countries, international politicians and leaders, definitely. There are Catholics who participate in this practice.
You mean clergy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were Jesuits specifically. Many different kinds of. There were officials from abroad. Some of my ancestry is Hungarian, and there were people from who I understood to be some basically high-ranking Hungarian politicians who would be there, who were particularly interested in my career as a fighter, apparently. I mean, there's seems to be a very established practice of these kinds of things. I almost died several times,
of course.
naturally.
Of course, yeah.
Had my scalp like ripped off of my head almost entirely and had to recover from that.
You mean you have weapons?
Usually not, but people are always sneaking things in, little blades or poisons or, of course, even if you place restrictions on it, people are going to find ways around it. So, I was taken by surprise quite often. I'm just glad I'm still alive. Louis was very fond of needles, and he was an expert in manipulating these very small needles that could basically be hidden sort of under a fingernail usually, that could be very deadly. So there were quite a few weapons, but they were concealed.
So I did have an experience that similar, but it's not exactly the same, because I was never made to fight children, for a spectacle. But I was, and I felt like it was the part of the training in Germany that I underwent that was for the killing. It felt like it was the final, like that's your graduation. It felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was put in a room that had white leather padding. Maybe it was a psychiatric hospital. And there was a door, a peephole, and I know that it was big enough, and I could see that the person who owned me at the time was watching. I assumed that it was filmed. I assumed that this was actually a snuff film.
Mm-hmm.
That I was a child, I was the little child who was naked, and two people were brought in, adults, who were dressed. And I know that I had to kill them. And I felt that they didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that I have a feeling that the film, the snuff film, it was the surprise element was what they were after.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the experience I had that resembles that. But it wasn't really a fair match, to tell you the truth, because I had a weapon and they didn't. And of course, it's maybe hard to think that a child, is capable of that. But then we were trained.
We were, yeah.
So the idea, I just have this image now, of the Lower East Side, the basement, children in cages, being made to fight to the death. I mean,
yeah.
And I'm sure it was also girls, correct?
Yes, also. I usually didn't have to fight girls, but it did happen.
So my next question, obviously, that seems natural to follow this, is that now, you did survive, amazing survivor, yet you were not completely on board. There was this little thing inside of you that, your truth somehow, So you go, we have to do so much, we have no choice. First you got out, we talked a little bit about it. How do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about what you think happened?
Sure. Well, a lot of things were happening. As I approached being an older teenager, after I'd been a breeder for already 3 or 4 years, when I was around 16, it was made clear to me that they wanted me to assume positions of authority and greater power, that they wanted me to become a handler and a programmer, maybe someone like Louis, someone who could, basically they saw that I had great aptitude for training, for teaching, for guiding, and they wanted to use that to guide people into these forms of depravity. And for that to work, it became increasingly important for them to have my consent, because you can't, essentially they couldn't trust me to do the job unsupervised unless they had my full consent. I mean, full, I don't know about full, but you know, they had to ensure that I wasn't just doing it because I was being coerced. It had to come from inside me. I mean, any teacher of anything who's good at what they do will tell you that's necessary for teaching, regardless of the subject, regardless of whether it's ethical or not.
Yeah.
So I think there's some wisdom there. So essentially there were a period of years, especially it was very heavy when I was about 15, 16, where they were presenting me with anything they could discern that I desired, absolutely anything. I mean, you know, I would desire some actress, for instance, and she'd just be brought in for me to rape if I wanted, or, you know, anything that I thought of. I mean, you know, like, oh, you want to...
We're speaking within the narrow confines of your breeder training, of course, you know, like you desire, I mean, but then you're completely programmed, so,
this is
you know,
true.
desire.
I mean, desire, I eventually learned that my desires were much broader than I had been led to believe, thankfully, and I appreciate that grounding. It's, yeah, I mean, I went through very intensive, basically, attempts to entice, I guess. They took me to private islands in the Bahamas, showed me basically how some of the trainers were living.
Would that be like the Jeffrey Epstein Island?
Among others, yeah.
You were there?
I was there.
And he owned it at that time, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
And you came across him too, by any chance?
I did.
I've heard a lot about him privately from people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's relatively safe to name these days.
Yeah. Was there anything that stood out that since that is something that people know, since someone that people know was involved with these things, is there something that you remember about him?
It's been a while since I've thought about him. He was never, I didn't get that close to him personally. I would just see him around. I mean, when I was being taken to these islands, I would see all kinds of popular and famous people. About Epstein himself, he was really able to switch on a dime from, you know, absolute murderous rage killing to just completely pleasant and like affable. And his, I guess his programming was more successful than mine. Because he was very quick on his feet and totally changed to suit the situation always. That's probably why he was in the role that he was in. Yeah, I remember that about him, tremendously versatile and very good code switcher, and just really, you know, he could deal with the high-minded and the low-minded, and just kind of bring everybody to their basis level and send them on their way to to experience whatever horrible things they might want. So, I mean, it was a well-run operation. Obviously, it wasn't just him. Like, huge numbers of people on these islands specifically, incredibly disciplined staff. Not that I'd want to use discipline for things like that, but...
No, but I mean, there's a lot of science behind it, and it's, you know, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
That the staff is very well disciplined, like everybody knows exactly what they do, and it works.
Yeah. So I can't speak that much to him because I never had that much of his attention. It's just like sizing me up for something and then immediately on to the next person. So I can't say I was ever spending much time
So
with
that
him.
was on his island particularly? If he sized you up for something and you went immediately on to the next, that was on
Yeah.
his island?
Yeah.
So this is at the time when you're a teenager and you're being enticed,
Mhm.
you're being shown what you can have, basically, if you follow along.
Yeah.
You can be like him.
Yeah. Needless to say, that was not so appealing to me, but it's really gross. I mean, the amount of wealth that was just on display. I mean, literally anything you want. I could have owned my own island if I wanted, you know. If I cared about that sort of stuff more, I'd probably still be in the cult. But thankfully I don't. So basically it came to a point where they just couldn't use me anymore without consent, or not for any role that they would want me for. Essentially, they basically said, we're done with you unless you want to join and make this your own thing.
Yeah, so I've heard about like the 5 I wills, you know, in the programming that the children, you know, go through these steps. And normally at 13 is the last I will. And then the 13 is then the age that they become, let's say, willing participants in all the harm.
I guess that rings true for me because they were trying to convince me very aggressively from 13 to 16 to convert or whatever you call it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like I was innocent at this time. I had plenty on my conscience. There's plenty that I was forced to do, you know, beyond just the cage matches. I couldn't even begin to describe all of it, the rapes and killings that I was forced to participate in. So it's not like I, you know, was necessarily above any of this. You know, I had sadistic murderer alters who, when in the right circumstances, on the right drugs, with the right handler, you know, easily could kill dozens of people. So I can empathize with that experience and that sort of mentality. Yeah, so I don't wish to indicate that I'm above any of that, but because you just...
Well, we can't. Like, no child goes through that experience that is prepared to be part of it. I mean, it was also the same for me in the year. Again, 9 to 10 only, but, you know, discovered at age 9 and then trained for 1 year, but there was a lot of promises, so I think it's the same, you know, the promises that were made about what my life was going to be like. It had a lot to do with wealth.
Yeah.
Had a lot to do with, well, the fame, of course, but the respect I was always going to get, the apartment, the best apartment in Paris, and the house on the Côte d'Azur, and the yacht. I mean, it was all told me repeatedly that I would picture, you know, this very easy and luxurious lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot to say no to. Just to mention it, like,
yeah.
We were children and we said, no, I don't think so. That takes something, you know?
It takes guts for sure. There was a lot of back and forth for me from 13 to 16. I mean, each time I said no in a different way, I would be tortured in a different way. And they would try to basically kill the alter who had said no and create another alter that they could talk to start the conversation over. So
you actually went through a lot of torture.
I did.
Because you didn't want to.
Yeah.
From 13 to 16, you did not give them the last I will, it sounds like.
I didn't. No. What was really liberating for me was, I think it was 14, was my first real suicide attempt in the context of being tortured to try to elicit my allegiance. Yeah, I was being held in a cell. I believe it actually was in the Bahamas somewhere. It's a very warm place. And I managed to find a way to cut myself, to slit my wrists. And I was committed to it. I was like, okay, this is my only way out. And they wouldn't let me go through with it. They found me, they resuscitated me. I healed. And that was kind of when I started to realize that I actually had some power in the situation. Like, I never thought that I did before that. It was like, well, I'm gonna, as basically like, I'm gonna have to yield to this at some point because I don't have any other option. But after the suicide attempt, I was like, oh, I do have other options. Like, I do actually have some power. They're trying to get something from me that I don't actually have to give. And that was very, very empowering. Yeah, and resulted in a lot more torture and attempts to erase my memory again and a lot of electroshock. Horrible, horrible electroshocks, especially at 15. Yeah, but I just wouldn't do it, I guess.
Good for you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome that you're sitting here. Yeah, because, again, I speak to many people, but everyone's experience is different. And my sense of your experience is that it was like nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you were one of those children who were born into it, and that's it. You know, you're just surrounded by these creeps all the time, you know, and you have to befriend them, and, you're a child, you have attachment issues, you have no choice. So that some of those slaves, from child slaves, it's like nonstop. And like you said, you were used all the time. Oh, it's unbelievable that you're sitting here.
I'm very happy about it. Yeah, so, and there are also some more esoteric aspects to this that have to do with raising your spiritual vibration. So that's the other aspect of it. So it wasn't just that they couldn't use me as a trainer, although that was obviously the main practical concern. But my more sensitive handlers were also making me aware, not intentionally, but I haven't really touched on this yet, but there's a whole psychic battle that goes along with the physical battle.
Of course.
Yeah. And it just plays into how I got out, so I guess it's time to mention it. So it came to my attention essentially that my core vibration, my soul signature, was raising to a point where they couldn't harness it anymore. So I still am wondering kind of what that means in practice. I hear, I talk about raising your vibration in a spiritual context.
I'm glad you wonder.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's on everyone's lips today.
Yeah.
Raising our vibration is like, okay, let's like not bypass now. Let's like look at who you are, what you do.
Well, apparently this is a real thing. It's real enough that my handlers perceived it and cared about it deeply. The core of it seems to be moving from fear-based experience to love-based experience.
Well, you realized you had power to say no.
Yeah.
And the battle that began then, that must match on a spiritual level too.
Yeah, that's true. A lot more of my spirit entered my body after the suicide attempt. A lot more, actually. I became a lot more myself. I became aware that I had a massive existence beyond the life that I had known up to that point. I became aware of a lot of spiritual information, a lot of past lives and future lives. I was much more in touch with my guides after that. I mean, a lot of people say this after a near-death experience. It's almost universal.
I had one too.
Yeah. But just to validate that.
Well, this is all very interesting, but I have to go to work, so that's it for the stream. Had a lot of fun. The workout was fucking amazing. Got my lunch ready. Those little wins are important, man. A lot of people don't even do this stuff. You think this is like nothing, but you go to work and it's like everybody there goes like across the street to buy food, Not a lot of people prepare their own food. It's something that it's not nothing, especially when the food you're eating is healthy and it's going to feed into the work you put into your workouts. So I'm going to subscribe to this lady. This is some good shit. I heard I heard about her from Ian Carroll on a random Instagram post. So this is paying off. I love this shit. I love the occult. I love fucking, Satanism and fucking Kabbalism and all this, whatever the fuck, black magic. I love all this shit. Rituals. I love to hear about it because to me, this is what's really important and what's really going on in the world. That's like the real layer. That's the real wheels of power. Are these people, whoever's running these places. So I'm gonna finish this video. I'm gonna finish it today at work. Anyway. Wait, did my camera stop working? Oh, fuck off. Well, anyway, see you later.